In today's Leeds news, tough night for Leeds internationals, January concerns over Gnonto, Leeds not owed Raphinha money, Dan James recovery latest, and Pablo Hernandez on Bielsa impact. Hey folks, Ger here, Friday the 10th of October with your Leeds United news. I hope you're all having a really good week so far. There's a lot of stuff to get stuck into, so we won't faff about, but if you could stick a like on this video, I don't ask for them too often, but yesterday was probably one of the worst days the channel's had in a couple of years, so the YouTube algorithm update is really having an impact. Not all the time, it's fluctuating rapidly, but there was an impact yesterday, so a little bit of concern at the moment. So if you could stick a like on the video, that would be massively appreciated. Now, and outside of that, we'll crack on. We'll get stuck straight into the news. Let's start off with the Wales internationals last night. And as most people will know, England took on Wales at Wembley last night, and it wasn't a good night for the Leeds United Welsh contingent. England ran out 3-0 winners, but if we're being very honest about it, it could have been considerably more on the night. Ethan Ampadu played 64 minutes before he was withdrawn from the game. Joe Rodon did manage 90 minutes, but has come in for some criticism from the local press. And Carl Darlow also managed 90 minutes, but conceded 3 goals in that game. They will hope for an easier night come Monday when they take on Belgium in their World Cup qualifier. Last night was only a friendly, so ultimately in the grand scheme of things didn't really matter. More of a warm-up than anything, but not nice for Welsh sides to lose against England, especially at Wembley. But Leeds have other internationals out, and how are they getting on this week? Well, Brendan Aronson plays tonight against Ecuador, and then on Wednesday night, 2 a.m. UK time, against Australia, which will give him a limited turnaround time for the Leeds game against Burnley. Tanaka plays today against Paraguay, and on Thursday against Brazil, giving him very little turnaround time to be ready for Leeds game against Burnley. Jakubia plays tonight for Slovenia against Kosovo, and then again on Monday against Switzerland. Then he returns to Leeds, so he gets a full week pretty much of training. But some Leeds players are going to be impacted far more heavily in this international break than others. Brendan Aronson out, Tanaka specifically. Hopefully having Willie Gnonto available will give Leeds some options on that right hand side if Aronson is jet lagged or just not fully ready for the game. The same way out, Tanaka likely to remain on the bench in this game because again of that limited turnaround time that he will have. But let's move on and talk about January concerns of a potential Willie Gnonto move. According to a report featured in Leeds Live today, stating that Leeds will consider their options for the January market depending on how the next 2 months go, which is common sense, I suppose, from the club's perspective. One potential incoming player has been touted by several different publications over the last couple of months. It's different names floating around depending on which ones that you listen to, but according to this morning's report, Leeds will also consider some exits from the club. The obvious players to consider in this situation are the ones that are not getting a huge amount of game time right now, but according to this report, that's not necessarily the case. The report states that Saudi Pro League sides Neom and Al Ittihad are both said to be considering a January move for Leeds United winger Willie Gnonto. There's been consistent interest in Gnonto over the last couple of years, so it's no surprise that there's interest again in the wide man at this point of the season. However, Leeds being light in the wide areas makes this move slightly more unlikely unless Leeds United can get a high price tag that they hope to get for the player, and in which case that could be reinvested into more than one position come January. Leeds are reportedly trying to sell Illan Meslier come January. That would free up some wages and, more importantly, a spot within that 25-man squad. And if figures are to be believed, Leeds could have enough spare cash after all of this to go and bring in 2 potential players in January. According to this report, Leeds have slapped a £30 million price tag on Willie Gnonto's head, which would likely scare away quite a lot of UK clubs, but not the case when it comes to Saudi Pro League clubs who've got far deeper pockets and may be more than happy to pay that fee for Gnonto. When you consider the likes of Harry Wilson being linked to Leeds United, and his price tag will be likely under £10 million. Edward Spurtjan has also been linked consistently with Leeds, and his fee is in and around £15 million. Leeds could potentially look at selling one player for a high fee and bringing in 2 players with some cash to spare in the end, and fill more than one problem area, and maybe finally even give Daniel Farke the number 10 he's been asking for 3 separate windows. But if we're being really honest about this and looking at the whole situation, it seems incredibly unlikely that Leeds United would weaken themselves in an area that they're already weak in unless they can get some players in beforehand and then look to sell that. But that is all ifs, buts and maybes, and as I say, it seems incredibly unlikely. But as they have said in this report, the league position will dictate an awful lot of what Leeds do. If we're down near the bottom end of it, Leeds won't be able to sit on their hands in January and will have to make some moves to try and strengthen the position come that time of the year. Let's move on. Let's talk about Raphinha money, and our Leeds still owed money on Raphinha. This pops up at least once a year, and last year I thought that we'd all put this to bed. We covered it in detail on the channel, but we've got a lot of new subscribers now, and the report yesterday in Spain has muddied the water yet again in relation to this topic. But thankfully, the Yorkshire Evening Post have had a deeper look at this for the second year in a row, and they've come back with the exact same answer. Do Barcelona owe Leeds United money for Raphinha? No, they don't. Last year on this channel, we spoke to football finance expert Kieran Maguire, and he clarified this by stating that the payment up front from Barcelona for Raphinha was clearly visible in Leeds United's accounts for that year. It came in, it was noted, it was visible, it was public. And that should have ended that story there and then, and it did until yesterday. Now yesterday, Graham Smith from the Yorkshire Evening Post has yet again had a look at this and has lined out what has actually happened in this situation. Leeds are not owed any money from Barcelona for Raphinha, but Barca do owe money for Raphinha, but it be to a creditor. In the piece, it states the following. Catalan giants may actually owe a creditor for money spent in order to buy him in the first place, while they may also owe small amounts to the player's previous clubs like Sporting Lisbon, Victoria, Guimarães and Rennes for things such as solidarity payments and training compensation. Although the reports pop up on an annual basis at this stage, Smith's update from the YEP remains definitive and the same. Leeds are fully paid up when it comes to Raphinha, with the issues now being between Barcelona and a creditor. The issue at the time was that Leeds would agree to sell Raphinha to Barcelona for less than the offer that Chelsea were putting in if they could get the money up front from Barcelona. At the initial time, Barcelona didn't have the money. Deco was Raphinha's agent, now a director at Barcelona, and they wanted to get that deal done. Barcelona borrowed the money from a creditor in order to get Raphinha to the club at that time. So they don't owe Leeds any money. Leeds have received every single penny that they were owed for Raphinha. They owe a creditor money, and they owe his other clubs solidarity payments as well. Nothing to do with Leeds United, everything to do with Barcelona. So let's see if this can finally put this one to bed at this point, but we'll likely be sitting here in 12 months time talking about it again, and we'll deal with it at that point again. But the story hasn't changed in 2 years. Ignore the reports online, ignore the clickbait, ignore all of the bits and pieces that are floating around again today from unreliable sources. This has been clarified by the Leeds United official accounts, and it has been clarified again twice by Graham Smith as well as Kieran Maguire. People that are far more credible than what's been floating around on X over the last couple of days. Let's move on. Let's talk about Dan James' recovery. Dan James is currently sidelined with an ankle ligament injury, but due to incorrect links that were reported about an ACL injury, something that Dan James has said himself to not be very happy about. Leeds United goalkeeper Carl Darlow has been speaking about James and has given an update on the condition of his ankle and his recovery at this time. Speaking on international duty, Darlow said that the injury isn't a bad one and that James is recovering fast. The initial return date was initially set for after the November international breaks, but according to this report, it could be a case that he's getting back just before that, and that would be a massive boost for everybody at the club as well as James himself. Speaking to BBC, Darlow had the following to say. He is obviously not happy about it. I don't really know what was said in the media, so I will be completely honest with you. I don't want to go into this in too many details, but it's not a bad injury. He's working on coming back as quickly as possible and is obviously a miss for the club and his country. He's one of my best mates, so it's something that wasn't nice on the day. It's probably the best prognosis that he could have had after what we originally thought it might have been. Leeds will need to cope without James for a little bit longer, but as we say, the return of Gnonto, hopefully after this international break, will take a bit of pressure off Brendan Aronson, the jet lag, the returning, and also just the amount of minutes he's been playing in recent times, and give Leeds more options on that right hand side, and definitely slightly more creative options than we've got right now. Let's move on to the final story of the day and talk about Pablo Hernandez and the impact that Marcelo Bielsa had on him. Pablo Hernandez is currently enjoying a winning run as Castellon's caretaker first team manager, and Hernandez was a former owner at the club before walking away from that position in 2019 over disagreements with his co-owner at the time about the running of the club, but he did maintain his shareholding in the club that he loves. Hernandez has now admitted that the best years of his career came at the age of 31 under Marcelo Bielsa. It didn't always appear that the two of them were on the same page, especially towards the end of Pablo's run at Leeds United. But now, after 3 consecutive wins on the bounce, he has laid some praise at the feet of El Loco. Speaking to Candea SER in Spain, Pablo had the following to say. The person who had the highest impact on me is Marcelo Bielsa. They were the best years of my career. I learned things I hadn't realised before in my career. He gave us some rubbish bags and told us to clean up the entire training ground. When we finished, we went back to the video room and he explained why he had made us do it, to make us appreciate all the people who support us and work behind the scenes. The drills that we did in training, Bielsa used to tell us that these could be perfectly replicated to matches on the pitch. There were drills that, at first glance, made you wonder what they were for, but then you realise everything has a purpose and they translated perfectly to Saturdays. We connected from day one. I had 2 of my best years with Marcelo Bielsa. He was extremely demanding, especially mentally, but he improves you. We achieved promotion in the Premier League in 2020 in the midst of a pandemic. We celebrated promotion by looking at the fans from behind windows due to the restrictions. It's great to see that the two of them never really fell out, because towards the end of his time there was that incident where Bielsa substituted him and Pablo took off the captain's armband on the far side of the pitch and threw it to the ground. And at that point you wonder, had the relationship broken? So it's great to see that they're still close, that they're still in contact, and that he has seen the benefit in having Marcelo Bielsa around him at that point in his career. They say you can't teach old dog new tricks. Well, at 31 years of age, it appears that Pablo Hernandez learned an incredible amount from Marcelo Bielsa. Folks, that'll be it for me today. We will be back tomorrow for a live stream on Saturday to wrap up the news week, as there's no games this weekend. We will be doing watch-alongs for our Ireland game as well, because I'm a glutton for punishment and I want to hurt myself. Outside of that, we will cover all the main stories and see where they led to at the end of the week. We'll do all of that tomorrow in a live stream, so we can get some Q&A back and forth going as well. Also, don't forget you can vote for us in the Football Content Awards. They close in 2 days' time, and if we make the shortlist, we'll get to Ellen Road. Outside of that, have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow on the live stream. See you then. Bye.